Hi, after a long time, I am giving this video on the importance of competencies in various settings. What motivated me to give this video is a recent talk I heard by Arun Joshi on creating professional excellence in the Indian Society for Applied Behavioral Science. While giving a beautiful talk on ISAPs and the professional development program, as well as the basic human process labs and a lot of other things, Arun had many suggestions to make. But one of the things he mentioned during his talk was an attempt made by him about 5 years back, or maybe more, to create a competency model for the PDP, Professional Development Program of ISAPs. I thought the competency development model was also meant for the basic human process lab. Anyone who would attend the basic human process lab, earlier it was known by different names, but I think by now the Indian Society for Applied Behavioral Sciences standardized it. In some of the IIMs it is called as the course on IPR or personal growth labs. In olden days it used to be called by Professor Pulin Garg and others as sensitivity camp. It is known by various names. It normally is for one full week. Sometimes it may extend to even more. Nowadays, many of the institutions like IIHMR and some of the IIMs are inducting the newcomers using a basic human process lab or a personal growth lab or interpersonal relations and self-discovery lab by different names. The important point that struck me when Arun Joshi mentioned about his attempt, which he said unfortunately was not taken forward by ISAPs, focused on identifying the competencies required to be to graduate in the professional development program of ISAPs, or to be called as a member of ISAPs, qualified member of ISAPs. He worked out a very interesting set of competencies. Later I contacted him and got a list of the competencies, which I think they stopped at some stage. For example, one of the competencies the team apparently identified, there were 9 competencies, I got a list of them. One of the competencies is confrontation. That means anybody who goes through the personal professional development program or ISAPs and graduates and becomes a member should have this competency of confrontation, which means he demonstrates a capacity for observing and presenting beliefs and perceptions operating in the group, because essentially ISAPs is based on group work. Use the group and learn about yourself, learn about how teams function, how organizations function, how a variety of teams function in our life and things like that. Group is the focus. Use the group as a source of learning and so on. So, confrontation is demonstrating a capacity for observing and presenting beliefs and perceptions operating in the group and working along with the group to generate alternatives. So a graduate, by the end of the term, by the time he or she completes the certification, is supposed to have certain level of ability to confront. There are a number of competencies. This is only one competency. The team also identified when can you say that a person has demonstrated this particular competence of confrontation. Now, there are a whole lot of questions that are asked at the end to be evaluated by trainers who observed this person or other people. Now, some of the questions are, does he or she clearly state the current beliefs in the group or by the individual? So, when you facilitated a group, you should be able to state the current beliefs in the group or the individual. Did he or she put forth a different set of beliefs or perceptions or behavior before the group or an individual? So the facilitator should be able to articulate and put forth different sets of beliefs. Does he, the facilitator, or she, work along with the group to generate alternatives? Did he or she state his or her point of view despite it being contrary to the group's view held at present? That is confrontation. Did he or she take the group confronting him as an opportunity to revisit their own self, or her own self, his own self? So, does the facilitator take the group confronting him or her as an opportunity to revisit himself or herself? Did he or she confront all the members equally without gender, age, religion, like me, etc. biases? Very interesting. Did he or she participate on and make the participants feel occasionally challenged, and so on? I think one can keep expanding this list, but these are some of the list of indicators. What we call as indicators or answers to these questions will give whether this particular person has demonstrated the so-called competence of confrontation. Similarly, there are other qualities or competencies like sensitivity, empathy, resilience, listening, openness, resourcefulness, communication, and analytical ability. About 9 of these competencies have been identified at that point of time, and each competence has been defined. So, as I understood from Arun Joshi, that this particular team of people who worked on competency framework for professional development, by the time the person completes, I think normally you join as a in the BHP, then go on to AHP, and then go on to phase 1, 2 internship, and then at the end of it you graduate and you become a professional member after maintaining a whole set of logs and meeting some of the criteria. So this team has said that at the end of the PDP, one should have demonstrated these 9 competencies. I think one can expand this, there can be much more, but this was a great work that was done by Arun Joshi and team to even identify what makes a professional in applied behavioral science. I thought this is a great thing, but unfortunately, I think it was not taken forward by Indian Society for Applied Behavioral Science. Why I got motivated when I heard this from Arun Joshi, his talk, is that I started looking at various professional bodies and their competency models. Recently, I have reviewed I'm a strong believer in competency models. Those of you who have seen my book on HR audit, written sometime in the year in mid-90s, almost about 25 years ago, I have taken all the award winners in HRD and identify the competencies that are required to be a successful HRD person. And they offered a kind of a list of competencies. Subsequently, we discovered Dave Ulrich from University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, has done a lot of work, and by now I think he has come up with competency models, and he kept on reviewing and revising these models every few years. And now there is a globally accepted competency model for HR professionals across the world. Similarly, the National HRD Network has worked out a competency model for HR people, which they call as HR Scape. For many years, in all our assessment center work at TVRLS, in the HRD audit and HRD scorecard, we have operated with a list of 10 competencies required for HR people. And we found that this competency framework is more or less closer to whether it is SHRM framework or CIPD framework or Dave Ulrich framework and things of that kind. Recently, whatever work we have done was validated again by Arvind Agarwal and me in a book called Leaders in the Making, where we identified 30 well-accomplished leaders in HR and written their stories, and also derived competencies for successful leadership in the book. In fact, there is a whole chapter on competencies as well as values. in HR field, this competency work has been going on for the last 30 years. Of course, David McClelland is one can acknowledge as the main originator of the competency framework. In his article written in 1973, Testing for Competence Rather Than Intelligence, where he demonstrated the importance of going beyond intelligence tests and achievement tests and looking at many more complex variables as affecting success in different kind of professions. I think there has been a lot of work done subsequent to this. As I was, of course, reflecting, these are all reflections that every good organization ultimately resorts to a competency framework. I still remember almost about 25 years ago when Infosys was making mark sometime in the year 97, 98. The board of Infosys sat together, and as they were making a mark and becoming very popular and noticed across, I am told that the board sat and then came up with their own competency framework. They asked themselves the question, how do we make sure that Infosys will continue to be a great organization? What is required by people who join Infosys and so on? And later you will find every good organization has competency frameworks. If that is so, it is very important for professional bodies to have competency framework. When I started reflecting about all of this, I was suddenly reminded myself that it is not entirely new. My mind went to the year 1984-85 when Rolf Lynton, Udai Pareek, and a number of others, and I had the good fortune of working with them in what is called as HTRD project, which is health training research and development project in Indonesia, financed by USAID. At that time, in 1984 actually, I participated in doing a task analysis. And the task was to identify we didn't use the term competencies, qualities, attributes required to be a successful nurse in the pediatrics department of one Dr. Kariadi hospital. This was a hospital in Semarang. Semarang is a town situated in central Jawa of Indonesia. I used to go, I spent quite a few days in this hospital, picked up the nursing staff working in pediatrics department. And every few minutes I used to go around observing each and every nurse and noting down what is the work that they were doing. So my job was to list down the entire set of tasks. And after listing the tasks, group them into some meaningful kind of tasks and identify the attributes or qualities required to make them successful. So we produced a list of, if I recollect, some almost about 500 and odd activities and grouped them into few tasks and identify the competencies required to be a successful or good. I mean, you don't say at that point of time successful because there was no assessment center. A good nurse in these departments. So we consulted doctors and so on, and we drew up a competency framework for nursing staff. And this particular framework, it was mentioned as task analysis. The term we gave was task analysis, not competency mapping. At that time, competency term was not very popular. Later, the term competency became popular, and competency replaced the task analysis. Right now, whatever we do under competency mapping is nothing but, I think, what we used to do as a part of the task analysis in those days. Now, I went through the internet and then discovered an assessment of the entire project by somebody from USAID, Indonesia, and he acknowledged this work that was done in Kariadi hospital, and he said it had a great impact in terms of helping the hospital to improve the efficiency of the nursing staff, redesign the curriculum, and redefine the jobs, and do some kind of a better manpower planning. Of course, he pointed out many other things. So this was quite motivating to know that competency mapping in the form of task analysis done almost about now 1985 is almost about 28 years back has resulted in something useful. Now the question here is, why don't we people in any professional body undertake this competency framework and define what are the competencies we want to achieve in any professional or certification programs that we are offering. This is just my thoughts. I want to thank you for listening to me.